Okay, come on, John shouted, holding out his hand to her from what had once been her own backyard. She stepped forward, then stopped at the lights flicker again. What was that? It was the walls. The whitewashed concrete was blinking in and out of existence, shivering like a dying bulb. It was the wall Charlie had been drawn to the first time they came to this place. Now she felt its pull as she had in the cave. It was stronger here than it had ever been, even in the dreams. That left her drained and aching. I'm here. She took a step toward the far wall and felt another pang in her stomach. Here. Yes, here. Charlie, Joan cried. Come on. I have to, she said softly. She went to the wall and put her hands on it and as she'd done before, but this time the concrete was warm and somehow smooth despite the rough finish. I have to get inside. For a moment, she felt like she was in two places at once. Here, inside the little room, and on the other side of the wall, desperate to get through. She drew back suddenly, taking her hands off the wall as if it burned. The illusion flickered, then died altogether. The concrete wall was made of metal, and at the center was a door. Charlie stared, blank with shock. This was the door. She'd been drawing it without knowing what it was, approximating over and over something she had never seen. She stepped forward again and put her hands on the surface. It was still warm. She pressed her cheek against it. Are you in there? She said softly. I have to get you out. Her heart was pounding, blood rushing in her ears so loudly she could scarcely hear anything else. Charlie! Charlie! John and Jessica were both calling her from outside, but but their voices was as distant as memory. She stood, not taking her hands from the metal, but tracing her fingers along it. It felt letting go for even an instant will cause her pain. She brought her hands to the crack in the wall. It had no handle, no knob, and no hinges. It was just an outline. And now she ran her thumbs up and down the side of it, trying to find a trip, some trick that would make the door open and let her through. She heard John climb back inside and slowly approach her, keeping his distance, though he might scare her away. Shirley, if you don't get out of here, you'll die. Whatever's behind the door, you can't, I can't give you back your family. You still have us. Shirley looked at John, and his eyes were wide and frightened. She took a small step toward him. We've lost enough. Please don't make me lose you too. John pleaded. Charlie stared at the ceiling as it trembled. Clouds of smoke were pouring out of the corridor they came from. John coughed heavily. He was choking. She looked at him. He was terrified, unwilling to draw closer than he already was. She turned again, and the world around her faded. She couldn't hear John behind her or just smell the smoke filling the air. She laid her head flat against the wall. A heartbeat. I felt a heartbeat. Though she made no intentional movement, her body turned to the side. She tensed, committing to remain where she stood, without ever making the decision. Something began to hiss. The steady, gentle sound of air was being released. From the base of the door came a rhythmic clicking. Charlie closed her eyes. Charlie! John grabbed her and turned her forcefully toward him, shaking out of her stupor. Look at me. I'm not leaving you here. I have to stay. No, you have to come with us, he cried. You have to come with me. No, I. Charlie felt her voice trail off. She was losing strength. I love you, John said. Charlie's eyes stopped drifting. She fixed them on him. I'm taking you with me right now. He grabbed he grabbed her hand roughly. He was strong enough to pull her away by force. She knew, but he was waiting for her to acknowledge him. She looked into his eyes, trying to let them bring her back. It felt like trying to awaken from a dream. John's gaze was an anchor, and she felt it. Letting him keep her steady, drawing her back to him. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, John repeated, having the words out in a sigh. He'd been holding his breath. He walked backward, gaining her as he went. He climbed to the top of the broken wall and paused, bracing herself against the insistent pull of the door and what lay behind it. She took a deep breath, then was torn backward by a colossal force. She ripped back through the rocks, her arms pinned to her sides. Charlie screamed, struggling to get away. Dimly, she heard John shouting close by. As she whipped her body back and forth against its grip, Charlie glimpsed the immense thing that had caught her. The twisted face stared blankly forward, or at least what remained of it. It held her with one arm, the other was gone, and wires hung from its shoulder like extra bits of sinew. Its plastic casing had melted away, and what remained were metal plates and stays, a skeleton with unnatural bulges and gaps in its frames where the collapse had mangled it. Its face was a gaping hole, splitting teeth and wire that hung in shapeless masses. Shirley couldn't see its legs, and after a second she realized they were gone. It had been dragged itself. One arm through the rubble. Wires spilled out of its body like guts. And then she saw its stomach. Shirley went cold with terror. Its chest had parted in the middle. Sharp, uneven teeth lined up both sides. Shirley kicked at the animatronic, but it did no good. It forced her instantly into the chasm. The thing embraced her, pushing her deeper into its chest as they tumbled backward together. The metal ribcage snapped shut. She was caught. Charlie! John was kneeling beside her, and she reached out through the metal stays. He grabbed her hand. Clay! He shouted. Jessica! Jessica was there in seconds. Charlie could see Clay struggling back through the narrow opening. Wait! Charlie cried as Jessica tried to pry the chest open. The spring locks! They'll kill me if you touch the wrong thing. But we don't. But if we don't get you out, you'll die anyway. Jessica shouted. Charlie saw the first time that the mouth wasn't finished closing. It was layered somehow, and metal plates began folding over her like petals of a horrid flower. John started to stand, but Charlie tied her hand around his. Don't let go of me, she cried, panicked. He dropped back to his knees and pulled her hand to his chest. She stared at him. Even as the metal plates closed over her, threatening to seal her off, Jessica tried to jam them delicately, without setting off the spring locks. John, Charlie gasped. Don't, he said roughly. I got you. The plates continued to slide down and meet in the center. Charlie's arm was trapped in the center of the storage mouth, protruding from the only gap where the plates didn't meet. She looked around wildly. Another layer was closing. She was wedged into the suit haphazardly, her whole body crammed into Freddy's torso, and she could see nothing but dim figures as more layers of metal and plastic closed over her. Above her, Jessica was trying to stop the next layer from emerging, and she felt Freddy's mutilated body lurch. Jessica, look out! She cried at the top of her lungs. Jessica leaned back just in time to avoid Freddy's violently swinging arm. The animatronic was on its back, but it struck out randomly. Beating Jessica and Clay away, its body rocked back and forth, and Charlie eyed the springs and robotic parts all around her. She drew her knees up to her chest, trying to make herself smaller. John let go of her hand, and she grabbed at his absence. She could no longer see outside. John, Freddy's body shook, struck by a massive blow. Let go of her, John screamed. Clay heft a metal beam from the ground and struck at Freddy's head. The twisted bear tried to strike with its remaining arm. Clay ducked out of the way and hit again from the other side. Out of reach, Jessica was still at the creature's chest, trying to find an opening to pry at it, but each layer melded seamlessly together. There was nothing to catch at it. John moved in next to her, trying to help. Clay struck at the head over and over, making Frey's whole body jolt with every blow. I can't get to her, Jessica yelled. She's going to suffocate. She tried to steady Charlie's trembling hand. Clay hit Frey's head once more with a resounding crash, and they heard metal cracking as the head was knocking off the creature's body. Can we get her out through the neck? John asked urgently. Frey's arm continued to flail, but it had weakened, and just risen and fallen, seeming to swing without purpose. Clay, help! Jessica tried. He ran to take over, digging his fingers between the plates to pry them open. Jessica continued holding Charlie's hand, which had gone limp. Charlie! Jessica cried. Charlie's hand closed over hers again, and Jessica gasped with relief. John, Clay, she's okay. Hurry. Charlie, can you hear me? It's Jessica. There was no sound from inside Freddy's steel chest, but Charlie had held on tightly to Jessica's hand as the others grimly walked to free her. Suddenly, a single high-pitched click reverberated through the air. John and Clay froze, their hands still hovering above Freddy's chest. For a moment, the air stood still. Then the metal body convulsed violently. It launched itself off from the ground, and a ghastly crunch of metal pierced the air. All three pulled back instinctively. Clay and John jumped up from the thing, and Jessica scrambled backward, dropping Charlie's hand. The suit fell again and was still. The arm was splayed on the ground at an awkward angle. The room was silent. Charlie, John said softly, then his face went white. He ran to the place where her arm was exposed, falling hard on his knees and grabbed her hand in both his own. It was limp. John turned it over and tapped her palm with his fingers. Charlie? Charlie! John, Jessica said very quietly, the blood. He looked up at her, confused, still holding on to Charlie. Then something wet dripped onto his hand. There was blood running out of the suit and down Charlie's arm. Her skin was slick and red, except the hand he held. He watched, unable to look away, as it dropped steadily from the suit, pulling on the ground and began to seep into his jeans. It covered his hands and hers until his skin was slippery and he began to lose his grip. She was sliding away from him. Sirens were suddenly nearby, and John realized vaguely that he'd been hearing them in the distance. He looked dizzily up at Clay. I radioed them, he said. We aren't safe in here. Clay took his eyes off his suit and looked up to study the ceiling. It was bowed and cracking in the verge of collapse. John didn't move. People were shouting outside, and flashlights popped up and down as they went toward the crumbling building. Jessica touched his shoulder. Breaks and cracks resounded through the space. John, we have to. As if to mark her point, the floor shook again beneath them, and something crashed loudly not far away. Charlie's hand didn't move. A uniformed officer pressed through the crack in the wall. Chief Burke? Thompson, we have to get the kids out, now. Thompson nodded and motioned to Jessica. Come on, miss. John, come on. Jessica managed to say, and a thunderous clatter sounded from behind them. Clay looked to the officer again. Get them out of there. Thompson took hold of Jessica's arm and he tried to shove him away. Don't touch me, she shouted, but the officer firmly pulled her up and over the rubble. Half dragging her outside, John only half heard the commotion. Then someone's hands were on his shoulders as well. He batted them away, not looking around. We're leaving, Clay said in a low voice. Not without Charlie. John responded. Clay took a deep breath. John saw him single someone from the corner of his eye. Then He grabbed forcefully by two large men and dragged toward the opening. No, he shouted. Let me go. They shoved him thoroughly over the broken wall. Then Clay struggled out behind them. Is everyone out? A female officer called. Yes, Clay said hesitantly, but with the rank of authority. No, John shouted. He broke free of the officers, holding him back, and ran for the opening again. He had 1 foot through the gap. Then stopped dead as a sweeping flashlight briefly illuminated in the room in front of him. A dark-haired woman knelt in the pool of blood, holding Charlie's limp hand. She looked up sharply and met his eyes with a piercing black gaze. Before John could move or speak, hands grabbed his shoulders again and drew him back, and then the whole house collapsed before them.